Good evening, everyone. My name is Sherry Mayberry, and I want to welcome you to Making Math Meaningful tonight, a webinar with myself and Beth Smith. Beth Smith will be doing the training. Before we get started, I want to let you know that there was a little note. This is always an issue right after we get started that people say they can't hear. You need to make sure that you select either on your audio tab, either the computer or your phone, and make sure that if you do use the phone that you dial in using the access number, and if you use the computer that well, you should be able to hear us if you use the computer if your speakers are okay. um, and also up in the top right hand corner you'll see a little hand raised. If you click on there, and if you have a question, you can type your question in the little box at the bottom. So throughout the webinar, Beth's going to be probably including you guys with some questions and feedback that we can share with everyone. So that's where you will type in your answer where it says type question here. Now, you will not be able to see what other people are typing. We will share it with you. After the webinar is over, Beth is going to type up the comments so that you will be able to see all the comments, because sometimes I will not be able to read all the comments that we're getting. So anyway, just wanted to let you know that as we get, those are a few of the housekeeping things. But again, if you got questions during the webinar, type them in that little box and we'll get to you. Beth is going to be doing the training tonight. And with that, I'm going to introduce Beth Smith as your trainer tonight.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Sherry. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone had a wonderful day. For those of you who are affected by the wildfires out west, I hope you stay safe. It certainly is a horrible situation out there. But tonight we're going to talk about math, and all of us have feelings regarding math from our experiences with math when we were younger. And hopefully this webinar, my goal for you is that you will walk away at the end with ideas that you can implement tomorrow. I try to do my webinars so that they are very interactive. As Sherry mentioned, I'm going to be asking for your ideas and your feedback throughout the webinar. So please do share, because that's how we learn best. We learn from each other. And that's what makes these webinars very fun and also very meaningful, because you may hear an idea from someone you never thought of and you're like, wow, that's a great idea. And it gives you something new to try. And on the other side of that, you have great ideas to share. So please do share. So Making Math Meaningful is the webinar we're going to be covering tonight. If you have a question relating to technical issues, just type it in the question box and Sherry will try to answer behind the scenes as we move along. But with that said, we're going to get started with our first opportunity to share. So, what does math mean to you? So when you hear the term math, what do you think? Type your ideas in the question box and then Sherry will read them out and we'll see if there's any commonality between what you share.
Okay, I forgot to mute myself. So y'all were probably listening to me type to some and respond to some questions. But let's see what we get here. Okay, numerals, number shapes and adding, everything living, quantity, shapes and patterns, everything from banking to baking to banking. Let me
That's a
try
mouthful.
to I know. Counting, balancing budgets, measuring, uh, plus, mind, shapes, adding, counting, learning to count, shape, sizes, sorting. I'm going to try just to pull up things that are new. Volume, estimating, um, counting shapes, numbers. Okay, those are good. Oh, numbers and
Excellent.
science. Okay.
Excellent, excellent. Great. We have lots of ideas there, as everyone shared. Thank you so much. That picture of the little boy there reminds me of me when I was doing trigonometry in high school because I had no clue what that was. And my dad was an engineer and he would try to help me, and it would always end up very badly. So math can mean a lot of different things and to a lot of different people based on our past experiences. So when you're approaching math with children, it's important to think about what your own ideas about math are because they are implicitly passed on to the children. So what we're going to explore today is how math is a part of our everyday lives. And I think some of you mentioned that when you talked about what math means to you. For instance, the baking to banking. Absolutely. We all use math every single day, even though we may not realize that we're doing it. For example, every time you follow a recipe and you cook something, or even reading the back on the directions, you're using math. So if you're putting something in the microwave, you need to be able to identify how many minutes it's going to be in the microwave. If it needs to go to a specific temperature, you need to know what that numeral looks like in order to put that on your oven to turn the dial and set the temperature to the right temperature. Paying bills, balancing a checkbook, which we all do, calculating a tip when you go out to eat, staying healthy, your weight, reading a thermometer, which a lot of us are doing these days more than we would like to, your heart rate, the calories that you consume if you're watching your weight, weather, reading a thermometer, time, reading a clock, reading a watch. Running a business, which you are all doing, requires a lot of math, from taxes to your budget to the financials. There's a lot of math involved. And then even something as simple as when you're at the grocery store comparing prices, which is the better deal. So the point being here that you all use math in your everyday life. These are just a few examples. So I want you to think about today, just today, and share one way you used math today in your daily life. And you can type that in the question box and Cheryl will read a few of them out. We're probably going to have, this is a big webinar, so we're going to have lots more than we can possibly share. So we don't get to share yours right now. Don't feel like we're leaving anybody out. We'll try to share as many as we can. But one way you used math today.
Making a phone call, the digits on the screen. Um, Recipes to paste and some herbs. Cooking. Maps for DoorDash. Uh, my ratio in the classroom to log into this webinar.
Yep.
Um, Diving cookies. I think maybe uh,
Probably was maybe baking cookies.
baking. Yeah, yeah. Ruler. Playing games, grocery shopping, budgeting, using blocks and counting them, adding checks,
Mhm.
collecting, feeling, and recording them. Must be, maybe that was the cookie person.
Yeah.
um, Looking at my weight. I don't do that anymore. Um, what's the what's the weather in math and songs? Showing the kids the weather app to see, oh, that's cool, what the weather was. Showing the clock on my phone to know what was next in our schedule. Math activities, comparing the long and the short, comparing shapes, making pancakes,
Yum.
counting fingers. All those are great. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. So the point being, whether you realize it or not, and most of these things you don't even think about the fact that you're using math, but you are. And so the point being, that's what you want to get to when you're working with children, is it's just part of everyday experiences, everyday life, routine times, and not necessarily confined to a worksheet. And we'll talk about that. We know that oftentimes parents want to see those kinds of things coming home because they think that's the only way their child learns something. And so part of your job is to help school the parents on the fact that if you really want your children to learn math, then you're going to have them doing things that will help them truly understand what, for instance, the numeral 8 means. You can write it on a piece of paper till you're blue in the face, and you might be able to make the most beautiful eights in the whole wide world. But if you don't know what the number 8 really means, and you can't make a set with 8 blocks or 8 goldfish cookie crackers or 8 crayons, then you really don't know what that numeral means. So it's just another symbol. So we're going to talk about that as we move through here. Excellent. So why is math important? Well, here this comes from the Conference of Working Group in 2004, and it talks a lot about why math is so important to children because it helps them develop curiosity and flexibility and inventiveness and problem solving and persistence. There's so many skills that are a part of doing math that are very important skills in life. And so when we talk about math with children, it is important for them obviously to learn their one, two, threes and what a circle is and what a square is. But it's also really important for them, and more so important for them, to be able to approach a problem, to have the persistence to work through that problem and to come out with an answer at the end. And if their answer is not the right answer, then figure out, okay, well, what wasn't right about, what did I not do right, or what do I need to do differently? So all of that is a big part of math and why it's so important. So I want you to think back. For some of us, like me, that's farther back, to your early experiences with math. When you're back in school, were they positive? Were they negative? And how did they affect your confidence and your ability to do math? And like I said, I was never a mathematically oriented person, and my father was an engineer, so he was very math oriented. He could not understand when he was trying to explain trig to me why I couldn't understand it, but I truly did not understand it. So think about your early experiences with math. Were they positive? Were they negative? And how does that impact you throughout your schooling and even now? And if you'd like to share, you can type it in the question box, and Sherry will read off a few responses.
Everybody's afraid to share their experience with math. Oh, I had a teacher that told me I was dumb and would never learn math. Oh my goodness, I can't believe somebody's, oh man,
Wow.
not so good, not a good response. So you can see also how that would influence a child. One person said, I enjoy math. I used to love math. Um, my teacher called me the professor, and I'm sure that gave you a lot of self-confidence. My older sister liked to play school when I was young, so she did math problems with me. I was
Ah.
excited to get the answers correct. One person just put negative. Um, love math till I hit algebra. I taught high school algebra, but once I got it in, oh, I got high school algebra. Once I got it in college, it clicked.
And
My,
it's very developmental. That's a very good point. I'll pause you for a second. That's a
uh
very good point. All math and all skills, not just math, not just reading, but you think about a child learning, for instance, to potty train. They'll do it when they're ready. And that is true with a lot of skills that relate to math, particularly with younger children, time and money. Very, very challenging topics. I would say when I was teaching, I taught kindergarten and first grade, and even my first graders struggled with time and money. Now, I'm not talking about reading a digital clock. I'm talking about a clock with hands and also then counting coins. So that's a very good point. She said when she had it in high school, didn't get it. But then when she had it in college, she got it. And it could be a combination of things. It could be she was more developmentally ready for it then, or it could be she had a better professor or teacher that helped it make sense. So that's really important. Sorry, Sherry, go on.
No, well, there's a couple more. One comment, negative back then because they weren't hands-on and didn't explain like they do today. Enjoy better today and did great in college and later years. I did good in high school, but it was hard.
Mhm. Great.
Um,
Thank you so much for sharing
yeah.
both positive and negative, because it's important for you to recognize where you're coming from as you're working with children. So let's move on. So the latest research coming out says that talks a lot about what's called playful math. And someone just mentioned that the difference between, for instance, doing it in a 500 million math problems on a piece of paper versus, using counters and manipulatives is day and night, right? And so there's so much research out right now, and I love this quote that says, abundant research has demonstrated that young children enjoy learning math and can learn far more than was previously assumed without a single flashcard or a worksheet. And that's from the National Research Council. So I would highly encourage you to share that with a parent or guardian if you have someone who is insisting that their child needs to do flashcards and worksheets. Now, when you get into elementary school, and I know a lot of you are going to be having school age children all day long now because of COVID and online/remote public school or private school. When you get into, I'm going to say, first grade, second grade, it is important to be able to memorize addition and subtraction facts. But you have to have prior hands-on knowledge to understand what it means to add and subtract. We're going to talk about that too. Same thing with multiplication tables, and usually around third grade. And I can give you an example of what happens when this does not take place. So my daughter, when she was in third grade, they decided to go through a new kind of math. And they did these crazy, crazy calculations to do a simple multiplication. All right. I mean, we're talking about lines and jumping, and I don't even remember what it was. I just remember thinking, this is crazy. So she never memorized her multiplication tables. She knew what it meant to multiply, but she never memorized them. So for her, then when she hit higher math in high school, it was really hard because you could not say to her, what is 7 times 6? And she couldn't tell you the answer, even though she was in like 10th grade. So there was a hole in her learning. And math is really like that. It builds and it scaffolds. So the important thing here is that you can learn what multiplication means and you can make it really fun. And then there is going to be a point at which you have to learn to memorize those multiplication tables. So there will be some things you do, and formulas are the same way, right, as you get into higher level math. But if you don't have that foundation from way back, then it's gonna haunt for the rest of your math career. And unfortunately, that's what happened to her. So luckily, she's in college and not doing anything related to math. So let's move on. So thinking about active games, they are a great way for children to truly immerse themselves in math because their body's moving, their mind is moving. It's all moving at the same time. So let's think about Simon Says, for instance. There's so many different ways that you could do math with Simon Says. Simon Says, obviously, you could do emotion 5 times, 4 times, 6 times, whatever. You could also do positional concepts. With more advanced children, you could use words like left and right, or diagonal and straight, zigzag. You could talk about shapes. Simon Says, go find something that is shaped like a circle and touch it. You could do patterns. Simon Says, jump, jump, and sit down, jump, jump, sit down, or whatever you want the pattern to be. An active game like that is a great way to incorporate mathematical concepts, but the children are moving, they're having fun, they're focused, because normally when children are moving, they're focused and they're with you, and so they're learning. So think about the games you play with children that are active games that you could incorporate some math. Does anybody have any other games that they play that they think would be good for incorporating math? And if so, what mathematical concepts would you incorporate?
It may take a minute for you to kind of type out. Oh, okay. Um, Playing counting blocks. Or how many blocks does it take to build a tower? I see using numbers for the children to find. I see the game I see. I'm sorry, I got it now. I did hopscotch with my children to learn math. Love that game. I've done it with my
Hmm.
grandson. Plus it's coordination too.
Yep, absolutely. Gross motor.
Hopping for a 4-year-old is tough sometimes.
That's okay. They can step.
Um, okay, hopscotch, balls in a circle, hula hoops, jump rope.
All of those are great.
How many pennies does it take to overflow a plastic cup of water?
There.
Counting. That's a really good one. Mm, Opposites can be used. We do puddle jumping and jump on paper puddles with numbers from 1 to 10.
Fun.
Beanbag toss. throw to the right of the ring or below the ring.
Ah, so positional
Then,
concepts.
yeah. Pick a
Excellent.
number, then build with that many blocks. So pick a number and you pick that many blocks out, and that's what you got to build with. Those are all you're doing math, but it's very interactive with the children. Those are great. Thank you.
And I bet the children are very engaged and very excited when they're doing those experiences with you. You're not gonna hear, oh no, which you would hear more than likely if you handed them a piece of paper and said, okay, now we're gonna do math problems. That probably would not have the level of excitement that these games that you're sharing do. So great job. Awesome. All right. So when you think about math knowledge in early childhood, there are many different parts to that puzzle. Um, these are the main ones, and when I say early childhood, I'm going up to about, pre-K. Obviously, if you're working with kindergarten and up, you're going to add in there things like addition and subtraction. You're going to do more with time and money. Eventually, you're going to get into multiplication and division, a base 10. All of those things will come into play. We're going to focus right now tonight on early childhood, but we will interweave a little bit in there for school age children because we know, again, a lot of you have them for more time right now. So what I would like you to do is, if you have your phone handy, take a snapshot of this slide because it will come in handy as we move forward, so that you have these skills in front of you. But let's talk a little bit about each one of those. Counting skills is fairly, obvious, right? Being able to count in order from, 1 to 20, being able to count the members of a set, that's counting skills. Number recognition is when you see a numeral, you're able to identify it. So let's say, for instance, we're reading the back of something that's going to go in the microwave and we need to know how many minutes it's going to go in there. That would be number recognition. Geometry is shapes, both 2 and 3-dimensional shapes. So things like obviously circles and triangles, rectangles, squares, but also spheres and rectangular prisms, those types of cylinders, they would all be part of geometry. Spatial and positional concepts, over, under, in between, left, right, top, bottom, those are all positional concepts or spatial concepts. Patterns, being able to copy a pattern, being able to extend a pattern, which means keep it going, and then create your own patterns. Sorting and grouping, how are things alike? How are things different? Estimation, how many blocks do you think it's going to take to fill this box? Measurement, including graphing. So measurement can be non-standard and it can be standard. When you talk about standard measurement, you're talking about using a ruler, a tape measure, something that we all use to measure with, a scale, that type of thing. When you're talking about non-standard measurement, that would be something like your shoe. How many shoes long do you think the couch is? Or you could use your hand. How many hands long do you think the pillow is? And you're using a non-standard, meaning not your typical thing, but you're still measuring. And then, like I mentioned, time and money, but that's for more advanced children. Now, if you're counting, obviously, pennies, which they're not safe for young children, so you probably would not be doing that. But let's say you have play money and they're dollar bills, then they could count how many dollars because you're just counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if you're talking about counting nickels, dimes, and quarters, you're talking about counting by fives, tens, and 25s, which is much more challenging. And then again, time and money. In today's world, we do so much reading of digital that we oftentimes forget the importance of being able to read the hands on a clock. And so that is something that's still important to be able to do. So if you have had a chance to take a picture of this screen, it's going to come in handy because we're going to talk about these skills in conjunction with specific experiences. So with that said, I wanted to ask one more question while we're on this slide is, which one of these skills do you feel you cover the most? And which one do you feel like you cover the least? So you can either answer and say most is counting skills, least is patterns, but which do you cover the most? Which do you feel like you cover the least as you look at this for your group. And it might be that you have a younger group, so some of these things may not come into play, but which one's the most, which one's the least?
Okay. The most is counting. Most is counting skills. Most is counting skill. Least is measurements. Counting again the most. Counting skills the most. Number recognition the most and patterns. Least is time and money. Oh, the most time and money and the least is estimation. Least is time and money. Counting again, number one. Counting again, number one. uh, Counting again, number one. Least estimation. Measurements the least. Um, Most is a tie. Counting skill, number recognition, and patterns. Least is measurements. Counting. Counting is pretty far the
I would
oh,
have guessed that. I mean, it's one of the things that we naturally think to do with young children. But what I'm going to challenge you to do, and this is where, learning is sometimes pushing yourself beyond the comfort zone, right? So what I'm going to challenge you to do as we move forward and talk about specific experiences, I want you to think about that one that you don't do as much, okay? And I want you to focus on the one that you said you do the least. And as we talk about what's coming next, I want you to see if you can figure out how to incorporate that area that you do the least as we move forward. All right, great. All right, so here we have a little girl, and she is playing with some different colored blocks. They look like they might be in a pegboard situation, but I can't really tell. So as she's playing, let's look at the different areas: counting, positional concepts, sorting, grouping, all of those listed up there. I want you to think about how she could do all of those skills just by playing with these blocks. Okay, just think about that for 1 second. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how I see she doing these different skills. And you can compare what you're thinking in your head to what I'm thinking in my head. We'll see how alike we are. So just give yourself a second. And again, focus on that area. If it was measurement that you don't feel like you do the most, think about, well, how could I incorporate measurement with this experience this little girl is doing right now? And then I'm going to go through here and give you some ideas. So obviously, counting is simple, right? How many blocks are you playing with right now? We can count them. Positional concepts. You could ask questions, and this is really important. She may be involved in free play, but that doesn't mean that you cannot be engaging with her. And asking open-ended questions is a great way to engage with children. So, you can engage in a conversation with her as she plays and ask questions. You might want to ask her about, okay, well, hmm, you have a pattern of blocks there in your board. Which color is beside the yellow block? Or which color is behind the yellow block? Or which color is in front of the yellow block? And then you're talking about positional concepts. Obviously, for sorting and grouping, we can do that in many ways. She could sort them by color. She could sort them by size. Okay, if they were different shapes, she could sort them by shapes. Geometry, this is a perfect experience to talk about a rectangular prism. All right, if you've never heard that term, that is what you call the block she's touching right there. It's not a rectangle. A rectangle is a two-dimensional shape, meaning it's flat, like a piece of paper. This is a three-dimensional shape, and it's called a rectangular prism. If that was a triangular shape, it would be a triangular prism. And obviously, if it's circular, it would be a cylinder. Or if it's round like a ball, it would be a sphere. Measurement. She could use non-standard measurement and say, which one of those blocks do you think is the same size as your hand or your thumb or your finger? Or if she's more advanced, you could actually use a ruler and you could measure the different sizes of the blocks. Estimation. How many blocks do you think you have altogether? Estimate before you even count. Spatial concepts. We kind of tied that in with positional concepts, which is behind, beside, between. Um, Patterns, obviously she's created one there. Green, yellow, or yeah, green, yellow, green, yellow, green, yellow. Can she keep it going? Can she create a new pattern? And number recognition. If you wanted to tie number recognition into this experience, then you would need some number cards. And maybe you turn them upside down on the table and she picks one and then she has to count out, somebody had a game like this, right? Count out the number of blocks that matches. Or she could divide the blocks up by color, that would be your sorting grouping, and then find a number card that matched the number that she had of each color. Okay, so just in one little experience, whether it be free play or guided play, which means that you're there and you're engaging with her, you're covering all those different math areas. Okay, all right, so now you're going to get to try this on your own. Pumpkin patch time is coming up soon. Let's hope we all get to go to a pumpkin patch, even if they limit the number of people there. It's at least an outside activity. I keep telling my kids, outside, just stay outside, which will be fine until it starts snowing. Um, so how could you make math fun? So thinking back to that slide that we had with all the different areas of math knowledge, what I would like you to do is think about which areas of math knowledge you could explore if you visited a pumpkin patch or you even brought in a pumpkin to the classroom. So hopefully you were able to take a picture of the slide that had the math knowledge skills on it, but I'm going to go over those with you again. So they are counting skills, number recognition, geometry, spatial concepts and positional concepts, patterns, sorting and grouping, estimation, measurement, which includes graphing, and time and money. So again, think back to that area or areas that you feel from that list that you maybe don't cover as much as you should, or you feel like you could do more with, and think about how you could incorporate that area with pumpkins from a pumpkin patch visit or simply pumpkins you bring in, especially given COVID, we might not have pumpkin patches this year. So, and you can think about different ages, right? It could be an experience for a toddler. It could be an experience for a 4-year-old. And then share the idea that you have, but let us know what area of math. So you could just say estimation and then do whatever it is you're going to do for estimation. Okay? Does that make sense?
Okay, we have already geometry, counting, grouping, patterns, and number recognition, that they would do all of that with the pumpkin patch. Geometry. And I think maybe, Beth, you're looking for maybe what the activity around that might be?
Yeah,
What's
so for
is
instance,
that-
if you say geometry, you could say, if I was doing geometry, I'd say geometry and talk about the sphere shape because a pumpkin is shaped like a sphere.
Okay, we got time and money, create pumpkin price list, and buy and sell pumpkins.
Fun, fun, fun,
Um,
fun.
Counting skills, sorting, grouping, measurements. Just, think maybe just sorting the pumpkins according to size or shape. Estimation, how many seeds in the pumpkins or how many pumpkins were in the pumpkin patch?
Ooh,
Uh,
that would be a big number. Then you're incorporating large numerals. That's excellent.
Pattern, counting, and sorting groups. Estimation, how many pumpkins fill the wagon?
Great.
Time, I could incorporate time. Example, how long does it take for a pumpkin to grow to various sizes? Much better. That's good.
Excellent.
Using a marker, putting numbers on the pumpkins for number recognition.
That's fun.
Patterning,
The little pumpkins would be great for that.
yeah.
Those ones you see at the grocery store.
Patterning, paint a pattern on the pumpkin using the vertical ribs of the pumpkins and then probably sorting.
Oh,
How many
fun.
lines are on the pumpkin? Estimation.
Excellent.
Those are all good. Thank you.
Excellent. Very good. That's the idea, is to think outside of the comfort zone. And here are some ideas I came up with. So counting skills. Somebody came up with the same exact thing. Count the number of pumpkins that fit in the wagon. They did estimation, but then obviously to compare your estimation, you're going to need to count. Number recognition. Talk about numerals while reading the prices of pumpkins. If you do go to the pumpkin patch, they're all going to have prices per pound or prices per pumpkin. What shape is the pumpkin? Where do pumpkins grow? On the ground, on a vine. And then you could even talk about the way the vines grow across the ground, or maybe they grow under a tree or around a bush. Patterns using those small gourds in different colors that you see at the grocery store, orange and white, to make the patterns. I really like the idea someone shared about painting the stripes of the pumpkin. That's a perfect way to make patterns, and the kids could all paint different types of patterns. Um, Sorting and grouping by size, estimation, how much do you think it weighs? Then you can tie in measurement too, because you have to get the scale out. Measurement, use a tape measure to measure the circumference of several pumpkins and then graph it. That would be an excellent activity for school-age children. So they would take a tape measure, the kind that is flexible that you would use when you're sewing, measure around the outside of the pumpkin to get the circumference, and then they could create a graph and they could compare the circumferences of their pumpkins. And then time and money. How long did it take to get to the pumpkin patch if you were lucky enough to be able to go? And how much do the pumpkins cost? And playing, if you can't go to the pumpkin patch, you could always have set up a dramatic play area that's the pumpkin patch where they could do that. So great, awesome. All right, we're going to try it again. This time we're going to use bubbles. Everybody loves bubbles. So given what you just saw on the last slide and what we just did a few minutes ago, do the same thing where you think of the area and then come up with an activity or activities to do that would address that particular area of math.
It's great, such a great picture. It's just a few more minutes. Okay. How many bubbles will come out of the wand at one time?
Excellent.
Time and money. How long does it take to blow a large bubble? The
Great. You
quicker
can
the
use a
thing.
stopwatch feature on your phone. That's a fun way for children to see time, because it's constantly going.
How many bubbles can you make in one breath?
Wow.
Let's let's count the bubbles geometry. How big how big or small with short or long breaths? Well, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Maybe the
yeah,
breath would be different. Counting
absolutely.
bubbles and compare the size. Size of the bubbles as they are blowing. Estimate how far the bubbles will go by running to the spot the bubbles might pop.
Ooh.
Estimation, yeah. What shape are the bubbles? How many bubbles can you pop before the timer goes off? That's with time. That's great. Experiment with making bubbles with adding different amounts of ingredients. So making a
Mm.
homemade bubble mix. Yeah.
Yep,
Mm.
that would be fun.
Patterns. What patterns do you notice when the bubbles are in the air? Do you see three together, two together, etc.? Also, what colors?
Mm-hmm.
Those are great. Great job. I know we'll get
Excellent.
more, but don't worry. These will be sent to you, the ones that we miss.
Excellent. All right, so here are some I came up with. Count out loud as they pop them. This would be especially helpful for those children who are on the younger side of things, to expose them to counting and numerals in general, that numbers go in a specific order. Or you could have your more advanced children count out loud. So let's say you do have more school age children, they could count out loud as the younger ones are popping the bubbles. Number recognition. Put number cards in a bag, pull out a number, the children identify and pop that many bubbles. What shape is a bubble? Someone mentioned that. Spatial concepts and positional concepts. Where do the bubbles go? Up in the air, down to the ground, over the bush, under your hand. Patterns. Make patterns while popping. Pop with your hand, pop with your hand, pop with your foot. Sorting and grouping. Try different types of bubble wands. Group how well they work. You could even set this up as a station where the children make their own bubble wands using all kinds of materials, kind of like loose parts play, but with different types of things. And then they can compare which ones work well and which ones do not. This one, someone mentioned, how many bubbles do you think you'll be able to blow with one breath? Use a tape measure to measure how far a bubble goes before it pops. Then you would need a tape measure like you use when you're building things. It's a very long tape measure. And then time and money. Use a stopwatch to see how long it takes a bubble to pop. And is it always the same? You could even graph that information. If you're doing something like that with more advanced children like your school agers, they could experiment and do it over and over again and then create a graph to see, is there a commonality? Do all bubbles take 10 seconds to pop, or do some take 20? And that's an excellent way for them to also practice science, to be engaged with science as they're making and testing predictions. Excellent. All right. So one of the things that is challenging for all of you is the fact that you have a mixed age group and you do not have a classroom of kindergartners where even in a class of kindergartners, everybody isn't all on the same level, but they're at least somewhat similar, where you have everything from a baby to now particularly the school age children. So how do you make that work? How do you incorporate with one experience like the blowing bubbles, all these different ages? So I just gave you some ideas with the bubble experience of how you maybe could do that, but let's take a look at another activity. Water bottle bowling. This is so easy to create, and it's once you gather the water bottles, you can use them for all different kinds of things. If you're using these with children under the age of 3, just remove the tops and throw them away. You don't need them for bowling. You just need the empty plastic water bottles and a ball. So with your toddlers and your twos, you're probably going to need to set the bottles up because their fine motor control and their dexterity is not such that they can do that. So you'll be doing the setting up, and then they can push the balls towards them. As the bottles fall over, you can count how many fell over, and that exposes them to the concept of numerals and counting. You can also describe the shape of the ball as a sphere. You can talk about positional concepts. The balls roll on the floor. The bottles fall over. Some bottles are behind others when you're setting them up. Again, you're exposing them to all those different concepts, and they're all related to math. Then you move on to your threes and fours. You're still going to be doing water bottle bowling, but they're going to do it a little bit differently. They can set up the bottles and they can count how many they have as they set them up. They can also roll the balls themselves, and when they fall down, you can ask them to count how many are standing and how many fell down. For even more advanced children, that can turn into addition and subtraction. We'll talk about that in a second. Um, that the ball is a sphere again and not a circle. More complex positional concept words if you want to expose them to left and right, around, between. And if you wanted to incorporate patterning, 7-Up and Sprite bottles used to, and I don't know, they keep changing things, but they used to be green as opposed to clear. So you could create patterns with different colored bottles if you were able to locate those. And then for your more advanced preschoolers, as I mentioned earlier, when you're talking about how many fall and how many are standing, you can write that as either an addition or a subtraction fact. So as they roll the ball, they can write it or you can write it. Okay, we had 10 pins, 3 are standing, 7 fell down, so 3 plus 7 is 10. Or if you want to focus on subtraction, we had 10 pins, 4 fell down, we have 6 left standing, so 10 minus 4 is 6. Do they know, can they identify a sphere at this point? And can they name other things that are shaped like a sphere? Before they roll the ball, challenge them to estimate the number they think will fall, and then have them compare the results to what actually happens. And then to add an element of measurement, have the children use a tape measure to measure the distance from where they roll the ball to the bottles, and they can change that distance and then compare the accuracy. So if I'm 5 feet away and I roll the ball, how many normally fall down? But if I move 10 feet away, what happens then? So you're doing one experience, but you're doing it in multiple different ways with different age groups. And yes, that may mean that you're going to need to have more than 10 bottles because you're going to have more than, one set of bowling going on at a time. Or maybe not. Maybe the children just take turns, and then as each child is doing it, you're focusing on a different skill. The point being that you can do one activity, but adapt it for your different developmental areas. And the same would be true for your school age children, right? You could even incorporate them in here by taking this a little further in different ways with math, maybe adding more addition and subtraction, or maybe even getting into some more advanced even multiplication, right? So there's lots of things you can do. But the point being, one experience for multiple different levels. Okay? Any questions about anything so far? I want to pause for just a second and see if we have any questions.
After we finish with the webinar, if you would like to send us a question, you can send it to customer service at GWIZ Education if you think of something afterwards. Either we're taking our time or we just don't have any questions.
And it could be we're getting tired because it's getting later in the day.
Yeah,
I know for me that's very true.
doesn't seem to have any questions, Beth.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask a question and maybe we'll have some responses to that. So, given everything that we've covered so far in terms of math, in terms of incorporating it into different experiences that you do throughout the day, what issue or challenge do you think may prevent you from doing more math with the children? Or you can answer, um, how do you feel that you need what do you feel like you need to do to incorporate more math into your day? Um, so that it is integrated into the experiences that you're doing every day with the children, whether that be a painting experience, whether that be puzzles, whether that is playing with blocks. Um, how do you feel like, given what we've talked about so far, you're going to be better able to do that?
Okay, there is a question, not sure it's around what you just asked, Beth, but
That's
the
okay.
question is, do your lesson plans, do they include GELDs?
You were in
Sure.
Georgia, and yes, I know what that is, and yes, we do. I had to think for a minute. Too many acronyms out there.
Yeah.
GELDS is the Georgia Early Learning Development Standards, I believe, and you can say yes or no to that. But yes, Georgia, and I'm going to answer this question for everyone out there because I know we have a lot of people who are customers, and we have many that are not.
And yes, she's
Gee
from Georgia. She is
Okay,
from Georgia. I can
okay,
see that.
okay. So, yes, when we created our curriculum, what we did is we looked at the state standards across the country and Head Start early learning outcomes. And what we did is we incorporated those into what we do. So on our website, and I'm going to go to our website after we're done here, but on our website, we have under about our curriculum a page of alignments. And if you go to that page and you go to Georgia, you'll be able to download our alignments to GELDS. And that would apply to any state across the country. I think we have all of them done. If there's any missing, I need to just fill them in, but I think majority of them are done. Doesn't necessarily mean they're up to date because, as we know, the state keeps changing those kinds of things. But in answer to your question, yes.
Okay, and back to how you can be more intentional. Um, let's see, more books about math. Um, Continue to implement ideas from the webinar. Be more intentional in my planning. Just knowing what to do. These are very good ideas. The challenge, the challenge is the different age group in the family
Hmm.
childcare home. I would use more spatial and positional concepts and the estimation in my program. Incorporating math in everyday activities. Challenge is the age range, as we hear that, mixed age group. That is the challenge. So,
And it's
yeah.
a big challenge, and it got bigger for a lot of people when schools decided to be remote or online. We're hearing that across the board. So,
Mhm.
yes, definitely.
And one last one, it would incorporate more puzzles and blocks and estimation.
And I want you to too think about meal times and snacks and all those routine times every day that you do, because there's a lot of things that go on during mealtime that can be ways to incorporate math. Instead of putting 3 crackers on each child's plate. For those who are ready, ask them to count out 3 and make a set. Because again, if you don't know what 3 means when you say count out 3, even if you can recognize the numeral, it means nothing. It could be just a scribble on a piece of paper. So you have to be able to connect those dots between that set of 3 crackers and the numeral 3. So there are so many ways that you can help children build those connections in meaningful ways. Even something like setting the table is one-to-one correspondence. For every chair, you're going to need a napkin, you're going to need a plate, and I know now during COVID, it is difficult to have the children handling other people's utensils, obviously. So that might not take place right now, but when it's a quote unquote normal time, that is something that they can do. They can help you read the back of a box of food you're going to prepare in terms of like looking for the numerals of even just finding a numeral, like what is a numeral? What does a numeral look like? So there's so many things that you can do day to day, even when you're using your phone. Let's say you need to call a parent, let them help dial that phone. Let them help push the numbers on the keypad. Technology is part of our life, so use it to help expose children to things, to math and concepts like that. Um, do we have any more questions regarding anything that we've covered thus far in terms of math and activities and areas of math? Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close out my PowerPoint and I want to go to our website because I know we do have some questions about gee whiz and how we do these things. I want to just have a few minutes to go there and just show you. But I want to make sure I don't have any questions right now regarding this part of the webinar.
Um, when you mentioned mealtime, one person's response, and this is just so right on, the kids always catch it when they get 6 crackers and 7 pieces of peppercorn. Pepperoni. I'm sorry, pepperoni. In other words, they know
It
what
doesn't
they're
match.
supposed to get. Um, okay, this is nothing to do with your question, Beth, but the question is, can they pull the webinar up later? And I know you're
Yes.
going to review
Yes.
that, but this
Yes.
webinar is being recorded, and by tomorrow, it will be on our website by tomorrow.
Yes, and that's another reason why I need to go to the website because I need to show you a couple things. One, where the recording of this webinar will be. Two, where the link is going to be that you're going to need to access to do the post assessment, which is not hard, don't panic, in order to get to the certificate of attendance for this webinar. And three, I want to just show you how we do what we do at GWIS. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to close out this webinar. Just give me 1 second to the PowerPoint to close. And here we are. Our website, for those of you who are not familiar with us, is simply gwiseducation.com. For the person that asked about GELDS in Georgia, and this applies to any other state standards, about our curriculum, and just go to state alignments. And from there, you can find your state and you should be able to find what you need. First and foremost, under training and support, you're going to go to webinar training. So if you need to grab a pencil and write this down just so you have it, under training and support, webinar training. And then you're just going to scroll down to the very first one, making math meaningful. The recording is going to be here at this button. Obviously, it's not there yet because we're recording right now. The PowerPoint presentation, and in case you were unable to download it during the webinar as a handout, is right here, the PDF. And here's the link you're going to go to for the assessment and the certificate, but do not click it yet because it's not active. Once we end the webinar, give me 5 minutes, I will go out and activate it, and then you can go take the post assessment. Here's the really important part. When you hit submit, after you've answered the questions, there's going to be a message that's going to pop up and it's going to say, thank you for doing your post assessment. Here is the link for your certificate of attendance. And it's a URL. You're going to block and copy it, put it in your browser, and then that will open up the PDF of the certificate that you can print out and add your name and the date. Okay, so if you click the assessment and certificate link right now, it's going to say, I'm sorry, it's not active. So just give me 5 minutes when we end, and then I will do that. We have numerous free webinars here on our website. We just did this one a couple weeks ago, all about Gee Whiz. If you are not familiar with who we are, this is a wonderful webinar to watch. We walk you through the nuts and bolts of how we address all ages, how we address all 10 developmental areas, how we address 40 different skills. Everything is in that webinar, and you can watch it. And again, there's a link to do the post. For that one, it's just to request or to get to the certificate of attendance. But we also have ones on an introduction to GWiz for those of you who need training. Connecting the dots is a new component we added this summer that helps you connect the skills that we cover in the activities and the lesson plans to your formal child assessment tool. And this explains exactly how that whole process works. And if you scroll down, there's just numerous webinars. They're all free. They're always available on our website, and anyone, you do not need to be a customer to access them. So again, to get to what you need to after the webinar is over, webinar training, which is where I am right now, scroll down, here's where the recording will be, here's where the PDF of the presentation is, and here's the link to the assessment and the certificate once it is activated. Okay, any questions about that at all?
It doesn't look like any. I know there'll
Okay.
be questions when we hang up. Well, there always are. So,
And that's okay.
because
The best way to reach us under training and support is simply send us an email.
how to
And
get
just,
certificate, Beth? That question just came up. I know you just reviewed that, but can you show one more time
yes,
how to
you're
get
going to
the
go to webinar training, and then you're going to scroll down and you will click this. That'll take you to the post assessment, which is a Google form. You will complete the assessment. When you click submit, then there's going to be a link that will pop up that will take you to the certificate. Okay, so you have to do the post assessment to get to the certificate. All right.
that always comes up later. Right now, if you click it, it's going to go nowhere. I'll say not active because Beth
Yes,
has not turned
it's,
it on yet.
I have not turned it on. So anyway, just in the last few minutes that we have, because like I said, I know we have a lot of people who are not familiar with GWiz. GWiz is a curriculum that we created specifically for family child care that addresses all the ages, infants, toddlers, preschoolers, and even school-age children. It has activities, daily activities based on units that do exactly the kinds of things we talked about in the Math is Meaningful webinar. That's how we do things. We integrate into our experiences all the different areas. I'm going to give you an example of that because it's a very timely piece. We just posted recently under resources for providers, seasonal and holiday activities. We just posted an apples booklet. And we do this all the time where we post, we'll have pumpkins coming up for October and we'll do something for Thanksgiving. And these again, you don't have to be a customer to get to, but I want to go in here for a reason. So if you open the booklet and you scroll down, you're going to see first and foremost a box that talks about the different developmental areas, and this is indicative of how we do things in the curriculum. We use picture codes. So when you look at our lesson plans in our curriculum and you see these codes, you'll know exactly what area you're addressing in terms of developmental area, and then these are the specific skills. But let me just show you really briefly in this Apples booklet, for instance. Put the apple. Okay, this is what we call exploring together, which is like it's a circle time, but it's not because the children are very engaged in exploring and doing things. And this is an active game where we're putting the apple, a paper apple for each child, and then they're going to do different things with it. And there's a song. Put the apple on your shoulder, put the apple on your nose, put your apple on your head, or wherever you're putting the apple. Well, you'll see this cumulative list, and this is how we do things in the lesson plans. This booklet of activities looks just like the types of things we do in our lesson plans. So they're going to do language, social and emotional, logic and reasoning, approaches to learning, physical development and health, music, and guess what? Math. Okay, so this booklet has examples of the kinds of things we do in the curriculum. Our units right now, for instance, for September, if you want to see what our outline is for the whole year, if you go under our catalog, which is about the curriculum, and you come down,
I think the outline is
it's in the
okay.
user's guide, but this will work.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so September, our two units are super senses and the five senses, which is what we're covering there, and then taking care of me as our second unit. On the 20th, which is going to be in 5 days from now, we will post our October units, which are Let's Harvest and Kitchen Caboodle. So our catalog has a lot of really great information. It goes through all these different areas and how we do things. But that webinar I showed you that's directly below the Math is Meaningful one, the All About Gee Whiz, is an excellent webinar to watch as well. Um, I know that's a lot to digest, and this was really all about math, but I know we had a lot of people on this webinar who are not familiar with Gee Whiz. So I do want to take just 1 second at the end to see if we have any questions that I can answer before we wrap it up for tonight, because I see it is 8:01. I know I'm getting tired, and I'm sure you all were very tired. But any questions about Math is Meaningful, any questions about Gee Whiz as a whole, anything that I can answer before we call it an evening?
Um, Again, we're gonna end it, and you're gonna have a question. So please don't hesitate. Beth, show them where they can send. Like, yeah, thanks. Send us an email right under training and support, which would go to customer service, and you can send a question there if you have one after we hang up. No
And that was just
questions? No
under training
questions?
and support.
Yeah. So anyway, we want to thank you so much. We try to keep these at an hour because we know you're tired, you've had a full day. Um, but again, thank you so much for coming. And there should have been a little flyer too that if you downloaded, and on that flyer, Beth, there was a discount code, right?
Yes, the discount code, if you're not a customer and you decide you would like to become a customer, there's a discount code on that flyer. It is GWE 2020, and it saves you $10 off your first month, quarter, or year. GWiz is a subscription just like Netflix. And so you just basically choose whether you want to pay monthly, quarterly, or yearly. And the $10 comes off whichever version of that you choose. So the flyer is there as a handout. We also have a special offer you can check out under here as well if you're not a customer.
Anyway,
And
thank you
is there going to be
guys.
a survey? Is there a survey at the end, Sherry? Will we?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Last time there was not. We had it, but it's technical difficulty on my part. But it should go tonight. There's a survey question. You will get that first. So take a few minutes to please fill that out. Then that gives Beth time to set up the post assessment. Then you can go to the website and do the post assessment. That'll give
right.
her time. But we do
So
appreciate if you'll just try
remember
to.
to get there, training and support webinar.
Great. All right. Thank you so much for coming. And with that, we're going to end the webinar tonight. We hope that you felt like it was worth your while. And a good night.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone. If you have a question, don't hesitate to reach out. Bye.
Hey, bye.